Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Solstice Recovery Podcast. Today we have Jonathon Neily, owner of Nano Recovery. Did I say that?
Yeah, so a
Nano?
lot of people say like nono or nano. It's an Italian word actually. So it's actually like no recovery. No one's gonna really say it like that because that
Okay.
just obviously sounds kind of weird phonetically just saying it. But it's a Italian word for grandfather. That's what it
Okay.
means because actually the house was dedicated to my late grandfather.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
he
really
he
beautiful.
was, I guess, one of us, right? He was actually, he was a heroin addict. He was reformed in prison, and he found God there, right?
Hmm.
And so he didn't follow like the 12-step outlines, right? But there's a lot of spirituality within there, right? And so he stayed sober after that and really changed his life.
Yeah.
So he passed away actually 3 days before I got sober. That was like my last run. Was I got a call that he had died of a heart attack, and I went on my last bender, and then few days later, I woke up in the hospital, right?
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, so that's where the name came from. So it's a little deeper, right? A lot of people
Yes.
think it just means like no drugs or something like that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a little bit deeper.
So it's an Italian word for
Hmm.
grandfather.
Yes,
Gotcha. Are
absolutely.
you Italian yourself?
I am. So I'm like, I did one of those 23 and Me or whatever they are. I'm like 30 something percent Italian. I got some Irish and English, and I'm Western European, I guess, right?
Nice,
So
nice,
yeah.
nice. So, for you guys that didn't get that, Nano is also another sober living home located here on the west side of Los Angeles, South Bay, right? Redondo Beach
Yeah,
is.
so yeah, a couple different locations. The initial one was based in Redondo Beach. That's like where I started everything, right? It was
Mhm.
at the Redondo Beach location, and then there has been expansion to the west side over in Westchester, and then also down south a little bit in San Pedro area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. And that's the beautiful thing about the recovery world and the Los Angeles based recovery is that we are two guys working in the same business, doing the same thing, but we're collaborating with each other. We work with each other and we're not working against each other like most other business models that are trying to put their, competitor out of business.
Mm.
I've sent so many clients to Nano and you've sent a few over here,
Yeah.
if like just whatever we're just trying to find the best fit for the client
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And if he doesn't work out over there, he'll send him to me. And if he doesn't work out over here, I'll send him to him. We always have that client care at the top of our mind.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's really important. I'm glad that you brought that up because it's great that we have that relationship, right? And I have a lot of relationships like that, like I'm sure you do as well, right? But not everyone is like that, even in this industry, right?
Yeah.
For me, if a client's unhappy with, the way that I have the house operating or whatever it may be, I'm more than happy to either take a look at that and try to fix it, or if they think that they could do better somewhere else, then that's great as well. And I
Yeah.
think that's super important because there are a lot of places out there that will instill that if they are not getting sober at their location, that they're not going to be able to get sober.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a interesting place of fear that they're putting into either family members or the clients themselves. And so I think that's good to also, touch on when we talk about this industry, right? Because we can go all over in this industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of good people that are really genuinely wanting people to get better,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's going to be other people that maybe are not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then that look at a client in a different way.
Yeah. Especially, there's so many places that are just trying to grab their cash and run, and
Right.
not here to offer the clients any services, any
Yep.
support, any real accountability. I mean, I know places that sober livings that are just, they're flop houses. They don't even drug test their guys. They don't,
Hmm.
offer them any sort of like support or staff there or and nothing at all. And then they, put a huge price tag on the bed too
Yeah.
and they get it because they could, put this fear mongering within the client
Yeah.
and think that like, hey, if you leave here, if you're not here, you're just going to relapse, but many times they relapse and they get loaded at the house, or getting actively loaded at the house.
Yeah. I mean, I think some fear is okay to have, right? I mean, we are dealing with, it's not just alcohol anymore, right? And you can still easily die an alcoholic death, but it's not, people are dying quickly after a relapse, right? And so I think there should be some fear that is, put within this. I mean, we can walk anywhere around Los Angeles and see the destruction of the streets, with the active users and things like that. And it really is a horrible thing to see. But I think instilling fear into people for the wrong motives and doing it for a financial gain is very interesting. And if you look at places like that and you look at when the money stops coming, what do they do with the client, type of thing, right? And so I think those are, it's just like any industry, there's good and there's bad, right? I think there's going to be that way. Anything that we look at, there just depends on what lens we want to look through. And, there are a ton of amazing people in this industry though, that are like actually like really doing the work to help the others. And really what it comes down to, I know for me, like why I got into it is, I personally felt like a calling, right? I had gone to treatment, right? And when I was sitting there in treatment, I realized the counselors that I was working with that had gone through this themselves, how much more connected I felt. Just someone that just knew the textbook version of this, right? Like my actual, licensed therapist was just a normal person. Nothing wrong with her. She was great. She was sweet. She was nice. But the regular counselor guy that, probably didn't have that much education, I actually gained a lot more from him because that he was an alcoholic himself.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where the industry, it's weird because some of this education that we should get, I'm not talking about like obviously the detoxes and medications and things like that, but the relatability and the connection that you feel with someone else that's walked through this is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. 100%. That's why they say we're uniquely qualified to help somebody else. Our story, our history, what we've gone through makes us uniquely qualified to help that person that comes through those doors.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, I wouldn't have been able to get sober if it was, somebody that had never gone through what I went through, or struggled with what the addictions that I struggled with, helping me try and get sober, because they just don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to, overcome these difficulties. And I could learn from somebody else that overcame them and is living a life today that is just full of happiness, joy, and love.
Right. And seeing that through others, right, and through like their work can give you that glimpse of hope, right? And I think that's so important, especially like early on in your recovery. You see these people and they're living a normal life and they seem happy and they may have a girlfriend or a wife and like they may have some material things or outside things, but you can also see that they have like some peace.
Yeah.
Right. And, for someone that, I think struggles with alcoholism or dual diagnosis and things like that, because I think a lot of us do, right, that are in this, that feeling of belonging and, just feeling important, we're all striving for, right? And that place of content. And it's an interesting world, for at least for me, because I know like I've had a lot and I've had a little, and having a lot does not make me happy, right? And I've beaten myself over and over up about it's nice to have nice things, but that's not going to bring me peace, right? I could still be riddled with anxiety and depression and wake up every day and not be okay. So I could be sober, but I still not okay mentally, right? Yeah. And that's where like, when we really get into this and working with other people and helping other people and seeing the families like, reunited together, that's like really where like a lot of this like peace kind of comes, from within. Right. And on the other side too, there's some really heartbreaking things that happen. Right. I remember early on when I opened up my house, it probably had been open for maybe a year or so. I had a guy that went through there and, you know, he was really, really struggling. He had been in and out, in and out, in and out. And he got about 6 months sober with us, and it was like beautiful. And, you know, we wanted him to stay longer, but he actually had to move back into a certain county for, you know, court reasons. And so we got his own place. And, you know, about 3 months later, he ended up passing away from an overdose. And I remember, you know, the family, I became super close with them, and, you know, they asked me to speak, you know, at his service, and they wrote me this letter that I still have like in my desk drawer. And it was, you would think that maybe they were mad or something like that. No, but it was the exact opposite. They were like so grateful that I had given their son back to them for like 9 months.
Yeah.
And like, you know, obviously they wish they had longer with him, but even 9 months of sobriety and like peace and happiness, like they were so grateful for that. And so those things are so monumental. Even when times are tough, you can take a look at things like that and really see like, you know, there is some beauty within this.
Yeah, of course. Of course. You know, and that's the basis of this program. We're all in this program just to help other people. That's what keeps us sober. That's what keeps us doing what we're doing, is that we could see that light, is in the hope that we could see that light turn on in somebody else's eyes when they finally get it. And unfortunately with recovery, is more often than not, we're seeing a lot more failures than successes. The recidivism rate is really, really high for drug and alcohol addiction. So you'll have 10 guys that you work with that you're really trying to get, that they're, you know, you're working hard, you're counseling them, you're trying to help them get sober, and maybe one of them actually does get sober and gets long-term sobriety, but it makes it makes all of the other ones worth it, you know, because you're helping, even though you only help one guy was successful, you're able to help that guy get his life back, and it makes all of it worth it at the end of the day. And I've had so many cases. I think, you know, I have another sober living home in Thousand Oaks, California. This one is in Los Angeles, but the other one has been open for about 4 years now. There's must have been like 200, 300 guys come through in the past 4 years. A lot of guys. But where I've seen the most success is guys that stay in sober living, give themselves at least 6 months to a year in sober living. And that gives them enough time to build that foundation of sobriety in a 12-step program, build up a community. And that's where, and, you know, I've seen people get the most success. And of the people that have stayed at our house for 6 months plus, you know, I'd probably say about, you know, 40% of them have maintained long-term sobriety of over like a year, 2 years now.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's going to increase drastically, right? The guys that only come in for like a couple months, 3 months, something like that. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, I got this. I'm never going to drink again. Yeah. Those are the guys that you most likely will get a call from again, or maybe you never will, but not in a good way, right? Yeah. And then it's our minds telling us probably not the truth. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Guys that stay within a program, I mean, look, a sober living, right? The biggest thing that we do is accountability, right? Accountability and community. That's the biggest thing. And I think that's where also they find that within the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Yeah. That's the big thing here, right? Providing guys a structured home, you know, where they can feel safe within, they have accountability of testing. Those things are really important in early sobriety. But getting into those 12 steps is really what's going to actually do long-term sobriety, right? I don't think that anything else beyond that, because you're not going to stay in sober living the rest of your life, right? Yeah. You need to be able to build that community. Yeah. And it's super like, I mean, that's the only reason why I'm sober today, for sure. Like,
for sure. Same with me. Yeah. So that's how we met, right? Know, was through the community and fellowship of AA. Yeah,
exactly. You know? And that's the only way, from my experience, that people will obtain long-term sobriety. Yeah. Like that's just where it kind of comes down to. But the beginning stages, that accountability is so important, especially these guys that can only get a couple days sober and things like that. And it's just like, they feel hopeless, and, you know, and you're talking about the numbers of the very small percent, right? And I think that's these guys that are trapped in the cycle. Yeah. Right. And
institutionalized.
It's so vicious. Right. And it's like, Yeah, it can be hospitals or institutions, right? And in hospitals, it can be, instead of just regular hospitals, they can be treatment centers now too, right? And they can just keep coming back, coming back, coming back. And, for me, I mean, I might be off base on this and people may disagree, but, I think detox, super, super important, right? Because especially when you're dealing with something that you can literally die from withdrawals, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol, benzos, whatever, like you could easily die from withdrawals from that, seizure,
Oh yeah.
things like that, right? So I think it's super important to go to detox. And I think residential programs and outpatients are important too, but to an extent. I think if you've been in 10 outpatients and 10 residentials, I think there's another problem there, right? Like, what are they actually gaining from it? I think it's actually more enabling it at a certain point, right? And I think that's another area that we need to take a look at, because I think if we values are super important, right? So, for example, like, I mean, I'm just spitballing right now, right? And if I was trying to get sober and I knew that I could only go to residential treatment and outpatient maybe once, right? My insurance only allocated that once a year. Maybe I would take it a lot more seriously than if my insurance just had unlimited. Right. Because then what's the reason to stop? Right. If I can go chill out for a month and then, do whatever I want, it's just can be just this habitual cycle that usually will lead with somebody not making it.
Yeah, exactly. And for you guys that don't know, a lot of these IOPs, what will happen is they need a safe place for their and IOP stands for intensive outpatient rehab. Linear timeline of somebody's time in treatment is they'll go to, usually what happens is they go to detox for about 7-10 days. Then they go to a residential program for the remainder of that 20 days. So that'll be a total of 30 days in detox res, depending on the insurance, but that's usually most in policies. And then after that, the client will get out. They don't have enough time under their belt, so sobriety time, to really go back into their home environment. So most times what they'll do is try and get into a sober living home, which is what we do. And where they could be more of a long-term resident and build that foundation of sobriety. And a lot of times, though, these people, addicts, alcoholics, they're in a rough spot. They don't necessarily have the resources to pay their rent.
Sure.
So a lot of what people do is, and a lot of alcoholics caught on to this, and this is where the enabling comes in, is that if they go to IOP or intensive outpatient, the outpatient place will help scholarship their rent at a sober living. And just as long as they go to their PHP IOP for 3 to 6 months, and they'll cover them for those 3 to 6 months. And where that could be super helpful for somebody that really, really wants to help and is interested in, getting sober, that's super, super helpful. But at the same time, it's super enabling for somebody that doesn't want to get sober or doesn't necessarily want to hold themselves accountable or is interested in long-term sobriety. Then that person who's not interested in being sober uses their insurance card as a bed voucher or rent payment. And they just hop around from sober living to treatment center to sober living to treatment center to sober living because the insurance is authorizing all this treatment. And there's a lot of broken systems within the treatment and insurance world that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
That need to be addressed.
That's what I was just kind of saying. I was throwing that random idea out there that if there was only an allocated amount of times that you could do that, then maybe that would take care of that problem drastically, right? Of course, I mean, there's going to be situations where guys that actually do want to be sober, they do relapse, right? That can happen. No one's perfect within this, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a huge difference between someone that you can see it. You can see when someone wants it and when someone's just there because their insurance is paying for it. Yeah. Right. And it's disruptive to the community, right?
Very disruptive.
Because they're not really wanting this, and other people will feel that, they'll see that. And, guys, when they're early on in their sobriety, they're really malleable, and they can, people can easily, sway them to go a different way. Right.
Mhm.
And, we're hoping at that stage, that's when they want to be sober, not to continue that lifestyle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it attracts people from all over the country to come to California on a free pass from their insurance. Like, hey man, your life out in, Kentucky or Tennessee or North Carolina, wherever you're from, isn't necessarily working out for you. Why don't you come over to California, get put up in one of these premier treatment centers for 30 days, and then, live at a pretty nice sober living in Southern California, where the weather's nice and it's sunny all the time. The beach is right there. Doesn't that sound amazing to you?
Yeah,
as an addict and alcoholic, that's
yeah. I mean,
life is going down the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, we could have fun with this, because this whole tangent can get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really can. We can go that way if we want to. And like, I mean, I know for me, like when I got sober, I decided, like I said, I wanted to do something in this industry, right? I was very new to it, whatever it may be. And I went to school. I ended up going to UCLA to get my KDAC, which is you become a chemical dependency counselor, right?
Yeah.
And so while I was doing that, I had to do internship hours at a treatment center, right? And what you just said is so on par, and even more so, these treatment centers would actually like fly. Like they would pay for the client's ticket. They would fly them out to their location and give them that treatment. Right. And, there were, like I said, there's always going to be good people that actually like works with. Right. But this system can be very broken within that. Right. Because I mean, I've joked around with my wife before and be like, you know what? I feel like I want to go to treatment for like a month and just chill out and like, get massages and have some nice little therapy and be fed well. And like, it probably wouldn't have to cost me a dime. Right. Yeah. Right. And it's like some people treat this as like a vacation, right? And not what it really is intended to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, everything, there's a shadow side and there's a light side. There's two sides to every coin. That is just part of the industry. It's unfortunate that that's what it comes with. Yeah. But that is, that's part of the industry. But there's also, although there's that side, there's also a lot of good people doing good things and good work out there that are actually helping people and will not fly people out, will not freaking go pay for them if they're bullshitting around and all that stuff. So there's two sides to every coin, but that's definitely a side that needs to be addressed, and it's broken. Yeah, no, it is. And like I said, like I'm not trying to be like destroy or say anything like extremely negative. I just think that there's things that we have to take a look at, right? And there's only so much that we can do. And I think like for me as an individual, like I just know I need to stay myself on the right path, right? Yeah. And be doing what I know and see that works. Basically just not be taking advantage of vulnerable people. Yeah. Right. And that's what these people are. They're extremely vulnerable. Right. And it's just there's just like anything, there's so many gray areas. It just depends on what side you want to walk on. Yeah, right. And exactly. Like for me, like if I'm, look, I've been sober now for over 6 years, and which feels like no amount of time. Just want to like clarify that. Yeah. Like, 6 years maybe to someone sounds like a lot, right? And in a sense it is. They talk about this in the book. Like if you had over 2 years of sobriety, that was long-term sobriety, right? Yeah. And so obviously that was written a long time ago. But, I still always feel new. I feel teachable. And what I'm feeling today, I may not be feeling tomorrow also. And what I felt yesterday, I may not be feeling today, right? It really just depends. In my 6 years of sobriety, I've lived, like in a very like clean spiritual way, but I've also done things that I'm not proud of too, right? And it's not all about just not using drugs or alcohol. Yeah. Right. That's like the beginning stages for me. And I didn't know that when I first got sober. I thought that if I just got sober, my life would be better. Right. And I got sober and my life wasn't really better. Yeah. I actually remember I did not
I didn't want to do anything with 12 steps.
Yeah.
When I got sober, I was like, fuck that. I don't need that. Those people are fucking losers. Like, fuck that shit. I am better than them. Right. Well, boy, I was wrong. Right.
Yeah.
But it took me about 6 months of just straight white knuckling it.
Yeah.
And I remember I was dating this girl, and I was leaving her house. Her and I just got in a big fight. It was like 10 o'clock at night. You know, there I was, like 6 months sober. I was in Santa Monica, and I called my buddy, and luckily he picked up, and he was a sober guy. I had met him through school at UCLA, and he had maybe a couple months more than me. And I was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do right now. I don't know if I'm going to go get high, if I want to kill myself, or what I need to do. And he was like, come meet me at a meeting right now. There's one in Marina Del Rey at 11 o'clock at night.
The Marina Center.
Yeah, Marina Center, right? Yeah, the old school Marina Center.
Yeah.
And so I drove my motorcycle over there, and like I felt like I had another surrender, right? I knew at that moment that my will was not strong enough, you know, and that was a big reality check for me. And because for that first 6 months, all I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
But in all reality, I was not good. When I look back on it now, all of my characteristics, right? And you can say character defects, whatever you want to call them, right? They were just running wild. You know, I was like definitely like not being honest. I wasn't exactly being faithful. I was doing shady stuff. And while I was sober, I was thinking like, well, I'm sober, so I'm good, right? So what I quickly realized, I can still be a piece of shit sober. You know, it's not the drugs and the alcohol, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like the very beginning stages of things on how, as long as you remain teachable, I think it's super, super important, right? Because I remember also too, like when I had only like maybe 2 years sober, I thought I knew everything at that point then, right? Because I had gone through the book. I had a couple sponsees or whatever. At that time, I had the sober living that I had just opened, and I think I had just gotten married to my now ex-wife, right? And I was like, oh my God, like look at my life now, right? I have a business, I have a beautiful wife, you know, like we were good, we were happy. I thought everything was amazing, right? In all reality, like I had painted a false picture of what I felt on the inside. Because at that moment, I wasn't happy, right? I had glimpses of happiness, but I really wasn't. I was over grabbing. Right. And I was just trying to fill myself with anything that I could. Right. For me, what was a huge wake up call was when when my ex-wife left. Right. When she left, I was like, I was a broken man. Right. And I am so grateful for that now, though. Because what it was, there I was like almost 4 years sober, with a failed marriage, right, to a woman that I was in love with. And I was just like, I felt like I had nothing, right? And it was exactly what I needed to rebuild myself back up, right? And what I did was I jumped back right into the program, right? And I started working with guys again. And I stopped focusing so much on material things, right? Because those material things are things that I was reaching for. You know, I had some nice cars and nice watches, and I ended up getting rid of those. Because I was like, these things are actually not helping me. Like, and it took a lot of pain to realize that. And so I bring this all up because it's not just the drugs and the alcohol. They talk about this. That is just like a symptom of what is like actually going on with us. Right. And there's so much work, there's so much experiences that we will have that allow us to grow within this. Right. And it's like, and I'm so grateful that I stayed sober through all that shit too. Right. I mean, that was like a really, really dark time in my life. And I want to bring this up too, because this is actually so cool. So when I went through that divorce, I ended up, getting a little crash pad down in Venice, right off of like Abbot Kinney, like a little bachelor pad. Right. And I, like I said, I was a broken man. I was highly depressed. I could barely sleep. And when I did sleep, it was horrible. Right. I'd wake up and I would like wake up in sweats. Like I felt like I was withdrawing. And in a sense I was. I mean, there's a real actual thing that people feel and when like lose their partners, and it's like literally a withdrawal, right? And I felt very suicidal at that time too, right? And I had people that were coming over to my house every single day. And it was the people in the rooms, people of AA, even people that I'd only known for a short period of time, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months.
Yeah.
They were there every single day. Not the guys that I grew up with that I had known for 20 something years.
Yeah.
I got a couple phone calls here and there from those guys, but those people were at my house every single day. And in the moment, I didn't really realize it. I thought they just wanted to like hang out with me in my spot in Venice. And I found out later that they literally had like communicated with each other, and they put themselves on like shifts to be around me.
Wow.
To make sure that I was going to be okay.
Wow.
And that is just, where do you find that?
Yeah.
There's no other community that will show up for you like that.
I'm getting chills.
I know, right? Like I literally was like, oh my God, because like I literally I'd fall asleep with one of my friends there, and I'd wake up and another one would be there. Yeah. Like it was like literally, I was so, like I said, I was a shell of a person at that time. So I barely knew what the fuck I was doing. And I was probably smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day at that point. And, I was just hurting, right? I was fucking hurting. But it was crazy to find out how these people, they, out of their own good nature, they didn't want anything from me besides to help me. And like, I just can't believe how grateful I am for that, right? Because I think honestly, if that didn't happen, I had moments where I contemplated like just done, right? It was dark. It was dark, without having any sort of God and having any connection in your life, and you have no way to escape that feeling, those thoughts can come in there, right? Me in here with nothing besides myself, that's scary.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's really scary. Yeah, exactly. So, it's just, that's why I mentioned too, like 6 years is cool and everything, but it just depends on what you're doing with your time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like life in general.
Yeah. I was at a meeting the other day, actually, and they were talking about the pink cloud, first few months for you guys that don't know what the pink cloud is, it's a first few months of sobriety where you're sober, you're physically sober, and you feel like you're on top of the world. You're floating on a pink cloud. Nothing can bring you down, but that is until exactly until, but that's just the enjoyment of like, wow, I'm not fucking my life up anymore. I'm like, physical sobriety has allowed me to make little choices on a day-to-day basis where I'm not completely fucking my life up, my relationships up, and I'm being able to show up to work. But eventually that pink cloud dissipates and you're rocketed right back down to earth. And what are you left with? You're left with yourself, your community and hopefully in that time you've built up, and the tools that have been given to you to help you if you use them to navigate sobriety.
Right.
But life is not easy. Life is very difficult, and it doesn't get easier once we get sober. If anything, it gets harder because we've taken away our easy, quick fix solution of drugs and alcohol. Now we have to actually deal with the stress, the anxiety, the relationships, and everything else that comes with a day-to-day living work without the aid of drugs and alcohol. And we have to navigate that in sobriety. Yeah. And it's not easy. And it's, it takes a lot of work, and we're not going to be perfect beings all the time. We're going to fuck up. We're going to, get into places that might even jeopardize our sobriety. But we have to make sure that no matter what, we stay sober. And that's why in the program and in just recovery in general, I look up to the guys, and people say, oh, time doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. No, time really fucking matters, because I look up to the guys that have 14 or even, have a solid amount of time sober, and they've navigated what Jonathon has gone through, divorces, lost businesses, deaths in the family, mental health issues, whatever. And they've navigated that all in sobriety without having to pick up a drink or a drug. And they've done that with their connection to the community, their connection to a power greater than themselves. And they haven't been picked up a drink or a drug because of that. Yeah. And those are the guys that I look up to in sobriety.
And also something else I wanted to say about that too, which is actually, you know, when you're in it, it's hard when you're in those times.
Yeah.
But once you realize that maybe what you're going through is going to help somebody else, then it's actually powerful, right? Yeah. And, you know, for in a perfect example, like my sponsor, you know, he went through a divorce in his sobriety as well, right? And so it was something that I could talk to him about. And once I was honest and vulnerable at meetings, other men came up to me and then they gave me their experience. And so basically whatever you've gone through, you can help channel that to, you know, for somebody else, right? And I've had guys come up to me that have been through heartbreaks too now, right?
Yeah.
And like, they ask me, how did you go through it, right? And so, and not saying I went through it perfectly, right? You know, like I stayed sober.
Yeah.
That was good, right? And I didn't cause, I feel like, any wreckage per se, right? I'd say the biggest thing that I probably had to look at was my sex inventory afterwards, right? Because that was something that another hole that I was trying to fill, right? Yeah, that sounds weird, but you know, but once I got that clarity that maybe this is exactly what's supposed to happen, right? I didn't have to fight it anymore, right? As much as like, the things that I don't want to happen, maybe are the things that need to happen, right?
Yeah.
And the decisions that I don't want to do are probably the ones that I need to do, right? You know,
contrary action.
Yeah, and it comes down, and once I stop fighting that, right? Because I want to fight it. I want to be like, no, this is how I'm supposed to do it. Or I want this, I want that, I want to live there, whatever it may be, right? And there's no point in fighting it. There's really not. There's only so much control we have of things. And like, and honestly, like if life is supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen. And like, you know, right now it's like, you know, I'm having a kid on Monday, right? And like, that's fucking amazing. Right. And talk about a new experience that I have no idea how to navigate. I mean, I've been a dog guy for a long time, but I know that it's not going to be the fucking same as having a cute little dog. Right. You know, and it's like, I'm about to experience this new chapter, you know, with this incredible woman. And it's, I don't know, like I'm so grateful for that. Because if I look back at my life, you know, 6 years ago when I was running around New York City, fucking being an idiot, I never would think that my life is here today. Right. And my good friend that I grew up with and we ran like around together for a long time, he came and visited me in New York, and he had about a month sober at the time. And I remember I was really confused when he came because we would always drink and do whatever together, things like that. And we met for dinner and I'm drinking and I'm like, dude, like have a drink with me. I didn't understand sobriety. And he was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And all night it was like that. And within a quick amount of time, within a month or two after that, that's when I wound up in the hospital, right? And he was like the first person I called. And I was like, I need help, right? And so it was like this connection that I never even went into my mind was given to me at that moment. And that's what we just need to do to others. We just need to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just need to show up. And it's, I want to just touch back on what you were saying earlier was, you know, making the right decision, even in sobriety, you know, and kind of touch back on those, you know, you call them characteristics, defects of character. And it's so hard to make those changes. That's where the real work comes, is making those behavioral changes and those decisions in day-to-day life, to be honest, to get up and out of your bed and actually do some work today, not be a sloth, you know, to say, hey, you know, maybe I'm having sex with too many women and this is filling, you know, address that and think this is filling a void. You know, it's hard to make those decisions in day-to-day life, but those are the decisions, those are the changes of character that are going to push you to become a better person. And at the end of the day, sobriety, physical sobriety, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole huge mountain of that needs to be addressed that's sitting under the water. And that comes from clearing the wreckage of your past, your relationships, your how you deal with resentments and anger on a day-to-day basis, your character defects, and how you show up to the world, how you show up for your community. And that all needs to be addressed. And
also too, you'll never be able to address it unless you get sober.
Yes.
That's the big thing too.
100%.
It's with those defects, with mental health, any of that. You'll never be able to address this stuff if you continue to use.
Yeah, exactly. Never be able to address it. And, one of the lucky things that I've been able to heal during this time is this, familial trauma that has been passed down to me through my father and my grandfather, and I've gotten the chance to be able to, and my mother and all that stuff, and get the chance to look at it and see how I can change it. So when I'm getting ready to have a kid, and I'm in Jonathan's spot, how I can make sure that I'm not passing down the same traumas that my father and my mother passed down to me. How I could show up and be the best parent as possible.
Yeah.
Best family member, best husband, best friend as possible, and show up for those relationships. And I certainly can't do that if I'm stuck in my character defects, if I'm stuck in dishonesty, if I'm stuck in self-pity. I cannot do those things.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to see your journey as a father. That's gonna be so exciting.
I'm really excited, and it's just going to be a whole new experience, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk to a lot of people, and so I'm sure there's going to be hard times, and community is going to be able to help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
And it's a really beautiful thing, and I'm so grateful for the life that I know I have today, and I think you're grateful for the life that you have today as well. And I don't think we definitely would not be here, right?
Yeah.
If we were not sober.
Yeah, of course. No, we wouldn't. And again, looking back, I got 8 years in early September. And if I'm looking at my life before I got sober and now, it is truly a life beyond my wildest dreams. I would have never thought I was in a position where I could own and operate 2 sober livings, have relationships, have meaningful relationships with my family, friendships, all that stuff, and still be able to be sober without ever wanting a drink or a drug.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely mind blowing to me that I could do that. I have the ability to do this. And that's all with the help of, my higher power and the community of AA that I'm in. I did not do this alone, and I cannot take credit for what I have in my life today because it's all somebody else is doing. It's all the people that came before me and they're doing, and them holding the door open for me.
Yeah.
And that's what we hope to do with somebody else. That's the whole point. That's all why we're doing what we're doing. We want to hold that door open for somebody else and see somebody else's life just blossom and bloom. It's beautiful.
Bloom recovery.
Yeah, that's my other sober living. Yeah, bloom, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a start of a new day. It's the solstice. It's a change. Change of seasons.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast
my
today,
pleasure.
John.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
and if you're ever looking for a sober living, John has a great place in Redondo Beach. You have a couple other houses too?
Yeah, I got the Redondo, Westchester, and San Pedro. But yeah, again, it's No Recovery. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Numbers on there, even just to chat, right? We're always here to help.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. We're always here to help. NanoRecovery.com, right?
Yep.
And then they also have their Instagram page as well.
Yeah, social medias, yep.
Social media, all that stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.